that track is cool, you know, just because it's music for me was never just about which DJ played my song or which label was cool. It's always been much more than that. Music has touched generations, liberated cultures, made people fall in love, made people cry. It's true emotion.
Hey guys, Dilby here. Welcome back to the channel. So today what we're going to be looking at is acid house. Some like old school deep acid house. I didn't really base this on any particular artist. I did reference a little bit Steve Bug and Ali Love's track Haze, which came out last year on Poker Flat. So good. Go check it out. I love that track. It's like a super feel-good summer house anthem. Very energetic, but very deep as well. Anyway, acid, for anyone who doesn't know, refers to the Roland TB303 with the resonance turned up, some drive and saturation, and it's great classic house sound, you know, one of the kind of building blocks of early house, and it's a very iconic sound. From a like functional perspective, as a DJ, when you play one of these kind of tracks, people go bananas. It's phenomenal. What I've done is like recreate this 303 and saturation type of thing in Ableton. So in the project, there's like a little rack which you can save to Ableton if you download the project from Patreon. Patreon's one of the best ways you can support the channel, so go do that. So you can save the rack and then always have it there, easy to access, and you don't need to buy a 303. If you like that hands-on feel of hardware and you do want to pick up a 303, the originals are bloody expensive now and pretty hard to come by, but for 150 bucks you can get one of these Behringer units, which are really fun. They sound good. I don't think they sound as good as a 303, but they look the same and they're pretty cool. And it's nice to have something to turn. Just quickly, if you like the track that's playing right now, it's a new one of mine called Barricade on Deep Palma Records, and the support for it has been phenomenal. And if you want to go and support me, there's a link in the description to Beatport and Spotify where you can check it out. Now let's jump into Ableton and make some acid house. Alright, so here we are inside Ableton, and this is a acid deep house project. It's really cool. I'm super buzzed on this one actually. I had so much fun making it, and one quick word of warning, it can really suck away a lot of time messing around with this kind of music because it's just so fun turning the knobs and making the synths do different stuff. But anyway, let's just jump into it from the start and we'll get going with the drums, and then we'll get to the meat and potatoes, which is the acid synth. So just for context, here's a little playthrough of what we're working with.
I hear people saying shit like this track or that track is cool, you know, just because it's music.
So it's the same one you heard in the intro. Love the vibe. It's the end of summer now, but summer vibes. Anyway, so the kick. So this is just like a kind of deep, nice, warm kick that I often use. Good stuff, just from a loop. And of course, got my low cut on here, which I'm just using in a couple of places. And then what I've done on the top here is added a kick from my sample pack, Underground Shades of House, link up here. And that sounds like this. I'll turn off this overdrive. So it's got a little bit more click. So together. So that's just to help the kick punch through a bit better. But what I have done is added this overdrive, and this really adds a lot of grit and dirt to the kick. So it's, you know, 78%, and I've taken the dynamics down. So that's just stopping the transient punching through too much. This is what it sounds like together. So that really makes the kick sound very solid, right? Big. So we want this like tough, gritty low end for this. Then the other part of the kind of low end, other than the acid bass, is these toms from a 909. So I'm basically playing a melody with them, I guess, if I go fold there. So I'm using the high, mid and low toms. So it's adding like basically like a bass line but it's not too loud in the mix. So it kind of adds this like rhythm in the low end, but it's not like going to fight for space with the bass line. So I haven't tuned them, I haven't tuned the kick. I'm just keeping everything really raw in this project. You'll see it's like 25 tracks, and that also includes the fact that I'm using groups and buses. So there's really not much going on in here at all. And the reason behind that is like, this is kind of like retro music. And back in the time when this stuff was being made, they didn't have a lot. You know, people would have like 1 or 2 bits of equipment, and they were kind of working with what they had. You know, maybe like you had an MPC and a Juno and a 303 or something like that. You know, it was just like, just minimal setups, minimal sounds. All of the equipment had like samplers had like seconds of sample time, you know, so just keeping it simple, making all the sounds that you've got count. Okay, so the claps here, we've got a clap from East End Dubs, and I've just like duplicated that down to the next track. Here's the MIDI, so you can see how they're interacting. So this one is like playing on every 4th downbeat, and then this one's just doing some little fills. And basically the reason I split it is because I didn't want the reverb on all of them. I just wanted reverb on the main one. If I had the reverb on the fill claps or the groove claps or whatever, it was just like creating too much reverb. I wanted the reverb to be quite big, but then if it was on too many clap sounds, it kind of overpowered the track a bit. Then I've got a snare also coming from East End Dubs pack. So what I've done with this is put some overdrive on it just to kind of bring it up in volume, make it gritty, make it kind of punch through a bit more, make it more aggressive. And that's that. The snare in the main break here is just doing a little bit different pattern. It's very similar, it's just got like basically a different ending. And then I'm using a kick fill, which I'll explain in a minute. So let's look at the hats. The hats are really fun in this. I've just got an open hat. From East End Dubs, just a kind of classic drum machine sound, like a 909. And then I'm just using basically just a slightly varied pattern. You know, it's based around that offbeat open hi-hat pattern, but then I've done like some extra kind of little fills and stuff on the 16th, and I'm not varying velocity, I'm just using it as it is, basically like if you're programming it by hand on a 909. I've got this closed hat, which is just 16th notes, and on this one I do have some velocity randomization. I'll turn that off. And I've also got quite a lot of pan randomization. So if I take that away, and take away the sidechain. So the sidechain adds a bit of groove because it's ducking it when the kick's playing. I'm using Kickstart 2 for the sidechain. So you can see that those first 2 hats are ducked down in volume by the kick. I've got this set to 75% so you can still hear them. Then we add some velocity randomization. And then the panning. So I didn't have this initially, but I felt like it just kind of added a bit more interest because the drums and everything were pretty sparse. Now, this is like my favorite part. I've got this 808 hat. This is just coming from the Ableton core kit, and I've just kind of changed the decays on the open hat and changed the levels a bit on the closed hat. I'm using a bit of EQ to control it because there's a lot of high end in this, but this is how it sounds with the kicks. So nice. This is the pattern. So we're basically, the reason I've taken out the closed hats here is because I'm using it like it's called a choke, which is something that used to happen on drum machines. It can only make one sound at a time. So when the new sound comes on, the old one turns off. You can do that in the drum rack on Ableton using choke groups. You can do it in like Machina from Native Instrument, but it helps give your drums that kind of drum machine sound. You can do it on an MPC. Yeah, so I love that. It really adds this kind of lift to the drums and a real like kind of characteristic vibe. So if I hit the drums, the kick, this is so good. Yeah, I love it. Have a look at the melodic elements. There's only a couple. Classic string. So I'm playing F, and then I've just got that playing the 7th below to just kind of thicken up the sound a little bit. Just kind of helps it to sound a little bit, yeah, thicker. If I just turn some of this stuff off. Nice solid stuff. I've got this Magic Switch by Baby Audio, free plugin, really cool. And that's based on a Juno chorus, I think. That just thickens up the sound and gives it a bit of width. It's a chorus. Actually, it sounds cooler out the sides. Nice. Then I've got this Juno chord. So it's Juno organ wave preset from Wavetable. It's just playing one note, F, and then D sharp. So if I set the scale to F minor, hit scale. So it's just playing F, and then we're going down 2 semitones to the D sharp. Then I'm using the chord device here to build a chord, basically. So what that chord would actually look like is, let's bring this up. Like that, and then that, and then that. I think that's what it would be like. Yep, then we take that, mute these. Same thing. I just like doing this because it means that I can then I can just try different chords by just playing one note, and it creates the chord for me. And then I have this scale device here, which I've got set to F minor. So that, like, in the scale, some of the chords will be minor and some of the chords will be major. This is just playing a minor 7th plus an octave note on top. And depending on where I put these MIDI notes, the chord that creates may have notes that are outside of the scale. And this just forces them into the scale, which means that I'm always playing the right chords. Then on this, I've just got an auto filter and an EQ to cut out some of the low end. So there's quite a bit of low end in this. So I'm just trying to thin it out so there's space for the low end stuff like the toms and the bass. And then it's also got quite a lot of high frequency information. Chorus. Tel Chorus LX, another free plugin, fantastic. I'm a big fan of choruses, as you can tell. Echo, just helping it kind of delay out, make it sound more dreamy. Got 56% on the reverb there, and then this phaser just makes it sound really nice, a bit more spacious, and just adds some movement as well. Then Kickstart again. So I've started using Kickstart for anyone who's a regular channel viewer instead of LFO Tool. LFO Tool is pretty expensive for what it is, and Kickstart, I bought it yesterday and I think it was 14 euros. So yeah, does almost everything that LFO Tool does. Not quite. LFO Tool's pretty cool for like gating. It's also got a filter and stuff in it. But for just sidechaining, instant sidechain, Kickstart is really good. And it means that anyone who downloads my project, link in the description, you can get it from Patreon. If they want to just open up the project and go, they can spend 14 bucks on Kickstart and get it going. Okay, so we've got some vocals. This one here is just a little one-shot loop I found. It's just kind of adding to the groove. It's nothing fancy at all. Nice, and adds to the vibe, I think. Then I found this spoken word vocal in a sample pack.
Too many people get hung up these days on what style the track is, you know?
It's been used in quite a few tracks, but it just fit the vibe. You know, you could find an interview or something on YouTube or just do something yourself. But, you know, this was something that seemed to work for the vibe of the track and made it a bit more interesting.
Music for me was never just about which DJ played my song.
So I've just got a bit of compression on that to keep the dynamics consistent. EQ, cutting out some of the low end. I've pitched it down by 2 semitones, not to get it in key, just to kind of make it feel a bit deeper to fit with the vibe better. So that shifted the low end down. So I just kind of balanced that out with some EQ. And it also made the performance of the vocal a bit less easy to understand. So I've just brought this up at 1.5K, which just helps it to sound a bit more pronounced.
Music for me was never just about which DJ played my song or which label was cool.
It's subtle stuff, but it kind of, with everything else going on, it just helps the vocal be a bit more audible.
Music for me was never just about which DJ played
And then I'm sending that to some reverb and some delay from my template. This is the reverb and this is the delay. There's a link to a video from my template. If you want to go and check that out, you can also download that from Patreon. And I've got a couple of little effects. A crash. It's just got a delay on it to help it carry on a little bit. And then here's another element from my sample pack, which is a riser. Nice one.
I hear people saying shit like, this track.
Now, it's time. Acid, baby. So, this is the sound we've got. Alright, so I'm sending a couple of things here. Reverb, delay, and some saturation, which is here. Crazy stuff. Grab the template project if you want to check that out further. Then I've got a glue compressor just to control the dynamics. With all the changes, like, you're making quite dramatic changes to the cutoff and resonance and stuff, and that can really change the volume, which I've tried to control here. There's also inside this rack, there is some additional kind of controls for the dynamics, but I'll get to that in a second. And then kickstart. And then just a little rack here to filter out the low end in this section here, just before the drop. So here's the MIDI. Okay, so I've recorded the automation by hand. So if I just loop this part here, which is why there's a lot more MIDI there. So just repeating over one bar. This is the MIDI, scale F minor, hit scale there. So we're playing mainly on F2 and then just moving around a bit to create a bit more interest. So you can see I've pulled the velocity down on most of these notes, and then a few of them have full velocity, which is creating the accent, which is like an element of the original 303. Then I've got this note here which overlaps, and I've got the synth set to mono legato. So that means that when this plays and overlaps like this, it pitches down from the first note to the second note. So if I turn off these, turn off these. So that's a cool effect. Okay, so let's have a look at the synthesis of this in this rack, which you can download, and then you just hit save that to your Ableton library. I've called it 2.0 because I have made one of these previously in a video, but this is infinitely better in my opinion. Have a look at the devices, not that. Yeah. Okay, so what have we got in here? We've got the Analogue, and I've got two oscillators, but they're playing independently. What that means is I've got this knob here, which switches it between saw and square. So when it's at 0, it's playing oscillator 1. Oscillator 1 is turned on, and oscillator 2 is turned off. So they're all set exactly the same. This is just a sawtooth, and this is a square. When I move this knob, turns off oscillator 1, turns on oscillator 2. So the original TB303 had the option of using a sawtooth or a square wave for your oscillator. So that's why I've done this. Then we've got the cutoff, which is here, the filter. I'm using a 24 dB filter. I think the 303 had, so the options on here are a low pass 12 or 24. I'm pretty sure that the 303 had a 16 dB filter or something like that. Maybe it was like a ladder filter. I can't remember, but it's not exactly like this, but this was the closest. Then we've got the resonance mapped here. That's like what gives it this high-pitched kind of sound. And without the resonance, I'm just going to take this delay away for now, and then I'm using the amp to add some saturation. You see the saturation knob, it turns up the dry wet, but turns down the volume at the same time. This is again to try and control the volume. As things get more intense, they get louder as well. So we want to compensate for that where possible. Now you could try different algorithms. I felt like the rock sounded closest to the Boss, I forget the name of the pedal, but there's like a yellow Boss pedal which is very frequently paired with the 303 to create the kind of classic sound. It's like the pedal, it's like an inexpensive, I think around $100 or something. You can buy them secondhand. It's like a kind of bread and butter guitar pedal. I'm not sure if that's what this is emulating, but this sounds closest to it. But you can try different modules here. Rock kind of has the most bite. Then we've got chorus, which is the Tel Chorus LX. And again, what I'm doing here is as I turn up the dry wet, I bring down the volume a bit to compensate. And the chorus, you don't need it. It's not something that is available on the 303, but it does make it sound a bit cooler. Then I'm just cutting out a little bit of low end with the EQ here, and I've got a series of limiters basically to try and control the output volume. You'll see as I move these cutoff and resonance knobs, the limiters become more or less engaged. So the idea behind that is to try and achieve a consistent output volume so that you don't have to go through and fix that manually. And just as another kind of safety measure for that, I've got this glue compressor, but everything should be happening pretty well inside this rack. So that is how we make some old school acid deep house. As always, you can download the project files from Patreon for this video, get in there, grab that rack, save it into Ableton. It's like then you've just got grab and go acid sound that you can tweak and have fun. But be careful, you can lose some hours, trust me. Now let's just play it through from the start.
Style the track is, you know. I hear people saying shit like this track or that track is cool, you know, just because it's music for me was never just about which DJ played my song or which label was cool. It's always been much more than that. Music has touched generations, liberated cultures, made people fall in love, made people cry. It's true emotion.
Alright guys, how did you like that? Fun, right? Super good vibes. Be careful, you can lose some time in there like I said. If you like this video and you're looking for something to watch next, then check out this one. I think you're going to like it. Well, that's it from me today. We'll catch you next time. Peace!